and on the value hierarchies derived from these binarisms. Now, man, in capital M, as hegemon, claims for himself the transcendence of the mind or spirit and reduces all his others, from women to non-human animals to the bodily, allowing their objectification. Now, this is what theorist Carol J. Adams calls the ontology of objectification, which subjugates women and non-human animals to this instrumental role. And these others of men and the intellectual operations underpinning this othering is also the focus of posthumanism, which is a thorough revision of humanist thought, starting with the centrality of man as measure of all things. Now, starting from these insights, Knights of the Circus emerges as an exemplary project of ethico-onto-epistemological revision aimed at dismantling these great monoliths of carnophallogocentric hegemony, exposing through the subconscious artifice of literature all these, social fictions which organize the world in fundamental asymmetry. So in this mistress piece of historiographic metafiction, basically the author revisits the end of the 19th century with this eye to futurity, which characterizes posthumanism, and looking beyond man and decentering him, and proposes an alternative ethics, which I believe is based on two concepts I will draw from these two frameworks. One is the idea of situated knowledges by Haraway, that is an epistemology of always locatable and partial knowledges of the modest viewer who learns to be worldly from grappling with rather than generalizing from the ordinary, against this universalizing objectivism of the hegemonic episteme. And the other idea is that of the praxis of care, basically extensively theorized by feminism and ecofeminism, on this ethics of care based on the recognition of plurality, mutuality, and symbiosis, which means making with and also becoming with, both terms which Haraway uses. And in this play of wait a second, not play but novel. In this novel of spectacle, seduction, simulacrum, simulation, all postmodernist aesthetics, Carter gets to problematize and reflect extensively on performance on and off stage. And in this play of appearances, I identify a key strategy to reflect on these social fictions, which to me is the juxtaposition, on the one hand, of a rich iconography of cultural figurations expressed through a wealth of metafictive and intertextual elements, which are meant to highlight the performativity of identity. And on the other hand, this grotesque realism with a focus on corporality, oftentimes humorous, meant to reveal and reflect on the lived experiences of exploitation and resistance under the gloss of symbol and certain performances and social fictions. Now, the strategy is particularly relevant in the characterization of the main character, the bird woman Fevers. She's constantly made to symbolize and to perform certain roles as the Cognate Venus, as the Helen of the High Wire, the Winged Victory. But the author makes sure throughout her history of misadventures to let us know that symbolic appropriation entails material exploitation. But I will not dwell on that, even though she is the focus of the novel. So those who have read it know there are countless examples. But in case this would seem only a strategy to criticize certain androcentric hegemony, in case this would seem as only the social fictions of patriarchy, I would like to present an example that I think is clear of this strategy of critique, but this time concerning a non-human animal. You see, the first time the elephants are mentioned, it is when the entrance to the circus is described, and actually they are describing this caryatids flanking the entrance. We are told that such were the guardian spirits of the place, the elephants, the pillars of the circus itself, who uphold the show upon the princely domes of their foreheads, as they do the Hindu cosmos, only for the narrative to shift through 2, the Colonel Kearney's elephants of flesh and blood as they are imprisoned and rattling their chains. And in an even more explicit example later on, as the elephants are freezing the train taking them through Siberia, this image is invoked again as we are told that the elephants no longer resemble the pillars of the world, capable of supporting the sky on their broad foreheads. Ice was already overcoming these caryatids of the world. I think it's a great strategy to reveal these lived realities of exploitation under all this social fiction and gloss of imposed performance and symbol. Now, Knights of the Circus is this postmodernist tour de force, which yields a wealth of insights when approached from such critical theory frameworks as I am drawing from. But in order to best explain how this alternative ethics based on care and mutuality is proposed in the novel, I would like to turn to the male main character, to his process of transformation and becoming as the novel unfolds. The novel is framed as an interview, which is important because it sets the frame of asymmetry to be subverted. At the beginning, we have young American journalist Jack Walser, who wants to unmask this bird woman Fevers for a newspaper scoop. So we have in him this position of the knowing subject of this hegemonic humanistic epistemic paradigm, who gets to know, systematize, and organize the world by virtue of his pretended separatedness from it or his pretended objectivity. And he is the subject, and Fevers, this bird woman, is the object of his scrutiny, whom he intends to basically dissect and subsume under his order and reduce to a story of his making. But however, Carter anticipates transformation when she tells us that himself he never found, since it was not his self which he sought. And this is after a life as a journalist based on his primacy as knowing subject, who believes his subject position is not subject to scrutiny. I'm sorry, there's a lot of repetition there, who has this self-assured objective position. He will have to learn to coexist, to be and to know differently as he recognizes multiplicity around and within. And the catalyst of this transformation will be Fevers, this freak who escapes his logic based on this mathematization of nature, which banishes the anomalous, the queer, and the hybrid. And I'm going to skip to the first example. When Walser watches her perform for the first time, he makes several observations with all the rationalism and scientism of the dissector's gaze. He tells us, so if this lovely lady is indeed, as her publicity alleges, a fabulous bird woman, then she, by all the laws of evolution and human reason, ought to possess no arms at all, for it is her arms that ought to be her wings. Now, Fevers, as a metaphor for fiction, as confessed by the author herself, does what metafiction does best, and that is through her own artificiality and constructedness, she reveals the constructedness of those social fictions that are defined against fiction and are naturalized as truths, starting with the laws of evolution and human reason, which are as biased, partial, and subjective to a certain extent as any other form of knowledge. Now, in the interview, Fevers recounts her life story, and this is a story of polyphonic human-animal entanglements, which stress plurality and reciprocity against this idea of the atomistic individuality, for she is raised by a dozen prostitutes and by observing a family of pigeons in what is a tale of symbiosis, or making with, becoming with, and interspecies dialogical ethics. And yeah, I think I'm going to skip this example. Yeah, and this series of incidents she recounts serve to problematize on these purely contingent demarcations which define what is human against the inhuman, subhuman, and also the natural against the unnatural, because that is what is here parodied in this novel. And as she reflects, For what is natural and unnatural, sir, the mold in which the human form is cast is exceedingly fragile. And another of these observations she presents us with when recounting her story is that when she was working in a museum for women monsters, freaks, she would look at the clients and echoing Hamlet, she would say, "What a wonderful piece of work is man." This is what gives the title to my presentation, for this intertextual allusion will recur in the 3 parts of the novel in key moments in this post-humanist deconstruction. And the story, spun by Fevers with the aid of her foster mother, ends up overwhelming the journalist, and he feels himself pulled into an infinite plurality of worlds. So he ends up joining the circus, which in the 2nd part of the novel will take him to Petersburg. And this is a part which is set in the circus as an arena for the problematization of identity and power dynamics, and a myriad of issues from imperial expansion to gender and sexual politics. And in this circus, he becomes a clown, and this is a turning point in the deconstruction of his identity, for we are told that Walser's very self, as he had known it, departed from him. He experienced the freedom that lies behind the mask, the freedom to juggle with being. Now, in this 2nd part of carnivalesque parody, a lot of characters are introduced, and a lot of stories of human-animal exploitation, resistance, and care come into play and further pull this male protagonist into their affective web and into this new ethics. But I would like to focus on just the first example, on the first transformative encounter Walser has with the non-human. And that is when he's watching the rehearsal of this number, Lamarck's Educated Apes, and he makes eye contact with the leader of this troop of chimpanzees. And we are told that Walser never forgot his first intimate exchange with one of these beings whose life ran parallel to his, this inhabitant of the magic circle of difference. It was like the clearing of a haze. This is the first encounter of his with a non-human, but an authentic encounter, which is unencumbered by the distance created by this hegemonic hierarchy of difference. And in a highly parodic scene, the roles are reversed as he becomes the object of scrutiny, this time for the chimpanzees, in a mock anatomy lesson. And it is of great relevance and great parody that as he is instructed to speak by this chimpanzee, what he proclaims is, "What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculty." But this transformation, however, takes a drastic turn in the last part of the novel, in which the circus troupe suffer a train wreck and are ejected in the middle of the Siberian tundra into a wilderness that will serve as a tabula rasa upon which the characters will have to remake themselves. And this part not only contains the most explicit expression of Carter's own brand of feminism, which is something I will skip, but also it offers the most explicit vision of these ecocentric as opposed to egocentric ethics of interspecies plurality, mutuality, and symbiosis. And it appears via the territorializing potential of music, as already theorized by Deleuze and Guattari. And you see, there's a moment in the novel in which the characters, which are left from the circus troupe, arrive at an abandoned conservatory. And there, this couple of women, this lesbian couple who found in each other care and healing after stories of abuse, begin one to sing and the other to play piano. And in this very beautiful passage, we are told that through the measureless wilderness around them roamed the savage audience for which the women must make a music never before heard on earth, although it was not the music of spheres, but of blood, of flesh, of sinew, of the heart, music that was at the same time a taming and a non-taming, music that sealed the pact of tranquility between humankind and their wild brethren, their wild sistren, yet let them free. It's important that this is a distinctly embodied ethics. It's not the music of the spheres, but of blood, of flesh. And now I want us to turn back to this transformation of the journalist Walser that we were tracing. For after the train wreck, he is left behind under the debris and the snow. And upon awaking, and the word choice here is relevant, he is, he is a sentient being still, but no longer a rational one. Indeed, now he is all sensibility. He has awoken with no memories, and funnily enough, his first notion of identity is that of the role he used to play as a clown in the circus, the human chicken. So he goes around flapping his arms and crowing. And Walser, who at the beginning of the novel was positioned as this hegemon, as this knowing subject of the humanistic episteme, right now of this carnophallogocentric, anthropocentric order, right now has lost the attributes which are invoked to account for man's superiority, that is speech and reason. So now he's the one who has interiorized this certain performance, this certain social fiction, and a subaltern one at that. And he is eventually found by a shaman who takes him back to his village. And it's significant that as he leads him, the first quotation that he announces is, "Oh, what a piece of work is man." Now, to further this deconstructive process, he is taken to a community, and again, the choice of words here is significant, where there existed no difference between fact and fiction, instead, a sort of magical realism. Here, all the established notions of the hegemonic episteme will be parodied. The relativity and partiality of such enshrined naturalized concepts, such as truth and history exposed. And here he relearns to coexist and to know and under a different logic. And finally, at the climax of the third part, when he finally reunites with Fevers and he recognizes her, they can finally return to that initial frame of the interview. Once the frame of asymmetry has been toppled, the model of coexistence deconstructed and reconstructed, now it's her who takes the reins of the interview, as she tells him, "That's the way to start an interview. Get out your pencil and we'll begin." Now, the novel culminates with a brief envoy, which cements this vision of coexistence based on the practice of care, on the idea of situated knowledges, on reciprocity, affect, and symbiosis. As Fevers and Walser, these two main characters, are about to copulate, he verifies that she does indeed not possess a belly button, but he no longer feels inclined to draw any definite conclusions from this fact. So he who began as this knowing subject of the hegemonic humanistic episteme, who gets to know organized, mathematized nature, from his pretended detachment, now is enmeshed in this webs of affect, mutuality, and symbiosis. And I want to skip right now to the end, because here we have also a beautiful expression. He is now the one who scrutinizes himself, who realizes his subject position is also subject to scrutiny. And here concludes my presentation. There are a lot of aspects and examples I couldn't comment on, and even the ones I did include, I maybe had to skip. But I'd be perfectly happy to answer and listen to any comments, questions, or observations you have to make. Thank you.